everyone. The only mastermind behind the Airy system, my boy Blake. The clapping was overwhelming. I stood still as my dad Richard passed the microphone to my sibling, a gambling junkie who couldn't program a word. Richard came near to me, his grin staying steady, and gave the hit that wrecked 10 years of my life. "Don't cause trouble, Noah," he murmured, his tone frozen like frost. "You're just the technician. Technicians don't receive ownership. Now grin, or you won't even receive a goodbye payment." I didn't yell. I didn't weep. I reached into my pocket, took out my security pass, and placed it softly on the dark wood table. It made a quiet tap that no one heard over the clapping. Then I turned and walked away. I walked past the backers, past the sparkling wine, and past the $1.2 billion worth of tech that, unknown to them, was about to turn into very, very costly paperweights. Before I tell you what occurs when a technician chooses to stop repairing the motor, leave a comment. Where are you watching from, and have you ever had someone steal credit for your life's effort? I sat in my 10-year-old car, the motor cool, hearing the muted bass of the party music beating through the garage floor. My name is Noah. I am 32 years old, and for the last 10 years I have been a phantom. Inside that place, they were cheering to the future of Orion MedTech. They were celebrating the Class 3 robotic artificial limbs that could let a paralyzed person run a marathon. But they didn't understand how those devices truly functioned. They didn't understand that every single line of software, every safety rule, and every FDA compliance record carried my digital mark. My sibling Blake, the planner, Blake couldn't even write compliance. He was a gambling junkie who handled the company funds like his private casino. I spent my 20s cleaning up his disasters. I worked 18-hour days correcting his mistakes, hiding his trails, and making sure that our tech didn't by chance hurt someone. I signed every safety record because Blake didn't have the approval. I was the safety web that caught him every time he fell. You might wonder why I remained. Why did I let them use me for 10 years? It's a question I asked myself every time I drove home alone, while they went on trips I paid for. The truth isn't easy. It's what experts call the trap of normal mean behavior. My dad Richard didn't crush me in a day. He broke me down bit by bit carefully since I was young. He taught me that love had conditions. He taught me that my worth wasn't natural. It was practical. I was useful only when I was handy. I recall when I was 12, I won the state science fair. I ran home, full of pride, holding the blue ribbon. Richard didn't even glance at it. He just pointed to Blake, who was weeping over a broken toy car. "Fix it, Noah," he had said. "Your sibling is the statue. You are the base. Without you, he falls, so don't you dare move." That was the lesson. I wasn't the art. I was the support. I wasn't the star. I was the force that kept their world from falling apart. They taught me to be unseen. They taught me to think that being the good child meant burning myself to keep them comfortable. They believed that training would last always. They believed I would disappear quietly because that's what bases do. They stay still while the statue gets the praise, but they forgot one thing. If you take away the base, the statue doesn't just look less amazing, falls to the floor and breaks into a million bits. I looked at my hands. These were the hands that wrote the software. These were the hands that ensured the safety of thousands of sick people. And these were the hands that held the only key to the kingdom. My phone buzzed in my lap. The screen lit up with a notice I had gotten every single day for 3,600 days. It was time. The buzz against my leg was a feeling I knew better than my own pulse. 5 p.m. The daily automatic message from the Orion main computer. I pulled the phone out. The screen shone with a plain white notice box. Body measurement handshake needed. Level 5 manager. Approved daily actions. For 10 years, I had pressed the green accept button without thought. I pressed it on Christmas morning while my family opened presents without me. I pressed it during my closest friend's wedding party while hiding in the bathroom. I pressed it while I had the flu, while I was on dates, and while I was losing my grandmother. That button was the rope that kept the billion-dollar pet walking straight. Richard thought he had taken my power when he took my plastic security pass. He thought letting me go meant I was gone. He forgot that he hadn't just built a company. He had built a kingdom of Class 3 medical tools that required an approved ruler to work. And he had just kicked out the queen? I set my tablet on the steering wheel. The company was live streaming the event for the world markets. On the screen, Richard was laughing, touching his glass against the lead backer's glass. Behind him, the Orion Mark IV sample arm was playing a soft piano piece, its metal fingers moving with smooth grace. It was a masterpiece of building. A masterpiece, zero ownership, I whispered. I looked down at my phone. My thumb floated over the screen. The green button meant safety. It meant keeping the peace. It meant swallowing the insult going home and hoping they might throw me a few bits of thanks later. The red button meant war. I didn't wait. I didn't shake. I pressed no. On my phone, a new note flashed. Approval refused. Starting emergency steps. I looked back at the tablet. On the live stream, the piano music stopped at once. The Orion arm didn't just slow down. It froze mid-action, its fingers stiff, locked in a protective stiff state. The sudden quiet in the meeting room was louder than the clapping had been. Richard frowned, tapping his glass again, thinking it was a break in the show. He turned to the sample and waved his hand, expecting the motion sensors to see him. The arm stayed dead. Then came the sound. A low, steady pulse began to sound from the display. It was the FDA-required alarm for an unwatched tool. Beep, beep, beep. The backers stopped drinking. They swapped confused looks. Blake rushed over to the display, his face white. I watched him angrily tapping the screen, trying to get past the lock. He looked like a child trying to fly a rocket by hitting the dashboard. A large red banner moved across the presentation screen behind them, replacing the Orion logo. It was sharp, clear, and impossible to miss. System stop. Unapproved use, license manager missing. All units turned off. Richard's grin disappeared. He spun around, his eyes looking over the room, looking over the crowd, looking for the one person he had just thrown out like garbage. I took a sip of the lukewarm water bottle in my cup holder. The show was just starting. The quiet in my car was broken by the ringtone I had given to my dad, a sharp, repeating alarm. The name Richard flashed on the dashboard screen like a danger. I picked up. I didn't say hello. I didn't have to. Turn it back on. His voice was so loud it warped the speaker. I could hear the mess in the background. Backers yelling chairs, moving the steady beep of the FDA alarm. Turn it back on right now, Noah. I know you did this. I know you tricked it. I leaned back in my seat, watching the live stream on my tablet. On screen, Blake was sweating through his costly suit, wildly hitting buttons on a display that was completely dead. I didn't trick anything, Richard. I said, my voice calm, almost tired. I told you, I'm just the technician. And since I don't work there anymore, I can't approve the safety steps. Don't give me that technical junk. He yelled. You broke the fleet. You put in a bug. I will sue you for everything you have. I will hide you so deep, you'll never work in this field again. It's not a bug. I fixed him. It's a feature. Specifically, it's the 24-hour manager rule needed for Class 3 medical tools. Without an approved manager to body sign the records, the system goes to safe mode to stop patient harm. It's not breaking Dad. It's the rule. I don't care about the rule, he shouted. I have backers here. I have $1 billion deal on the table. Fix it. There was a scraping sound, and then my mom's voice came on the line. She was crying. That breathy, high-pitched cry she used whenever she wanted to control me. Noah, please, Sandra begged. How could you do this? How could you be so mean to your sibling? This was his big night. He needs the win. Why are you trying to wreck this family? I closed my eyes for a second. There it was. The classic switch. When dangers didn't work, they changed to shame. They didn't care that Richard had just let me go and erased my being. They only cared that I was ruining the party. I didn't wreck the family, Mom. I said, you did. When you sat there and watched Dad give my life's effort to a gambling junkie, you picked your side. We gave you a job. She yelled, the mask falling. We fed you. We let you play expert in that lab, and this is how you pay us back. By shaming us? Give me the phone. Richard grabbed it back. His breathing was rough. Listen to me, you thankless little punk. I want the override code. Right now? Give me the password and maybe I won't call the cops. I looked at my hand again. The thumb that had pressed no. There is no password, Richard, I said. It's a body key. It scans the special vein pattern of an approved engineer's thumbprint. Specifically, my thumbprint. Then come back here. He ordered, get in here and open it. I can't do that. I said, why the heck not? Because you let me go. I said. And as you so clearly said, technicians don't receive ownership. So unless you're planning to sign over 50% of the company in the next 5 minutes, my thumb stays with me. You can't do this. He stumbled, the truth finally hitting him. You can't just walk away with the keys to $1 billion company. I just did, I said. Good luck with the backers. Dad, I hear they hate shocks. I tapped the red end call button on the screen. The call cut. The alarm stopped. On the tablet, I watched as the lead backer stood up, fastened his jacket, and walked out of the room. Richard ran after him, grabbing his arm, hopeless sad. I put the car in drive. I wasn't going home. I was going back, not to fix it, but to end it. I walked back into the lobby of Orion MedTech. The security guard, old Mr. Jenkins, couldn't look me in the eye. He just let me through the gate with a shaking hand. I took the elevator up to the top floor. I expected legal people. I expected a deal offer. I expected Richard to slide a piece of paper across the table with a number that had too many zeros, trying to buy back his pride. I was innocent. I forgot that when you trap a selfish person, they don't talk. They destroy. The meeting room doors were open. The feeling inside was heavy, choking. The backers were still there, sitting in tight quiet. Blake was leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. Richard stood at the head of the table. He wasn't sweating anymore. He wasn't yelling. He was fixing his cufflinks, looking calm. Too calm. I'm here, I said, stepping into the room. Let's talk about the ownership I was denied. Richard looked up. He didn't grin. He looked at me with a show of such deep sadness that for a second, I almost believed it myself. I'm sorry, Noah, he said softly. I really didn't want it to end like this. End like what? Like this. He nodded toward the side door. It burst open. 4 men in jackets rushed in. They didn't look like company legal people. They moved with the aggressive exactness of cops. On the back of their jackets in bold yellow letters, FBI, my blood ran cold. Noah Vance, the lead officer shouted, crossing the room in 3 steps. Hands where I can see them. What is this? I asked, stepping back. I didn't do anything. We have a sworn statement from the boss of Orion MedTech claiming company spying, wire crime, and the use of nasty ransom software, the officer said. He grabbed my wrist, turning me around. I looked at Richard. He was shaking his head, playing the part of the broken father to perfection. He held up a thick tan folder. She tricked the system? Richard told the officers, his voice shaking with fake feeling. We have the proof. She put in a bug to hold the company hostage. She demanded 50% of the shares to open it. It's blackmail. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around my wrists. The sound echoed in the silent room. I stood there physically held while the people I had worked for a decade watched. The lead backer looked at me with pure dislike. To them, I wasn't the planner anymore. I was just a bitter, shaky former worker trying to burn down the place. I didn't put in a bug. I said, my voice shaking despite my best tries. It's a safety step. Check the software. Save it for the judge, the officer said, tightening the cuffs. Blake pushed off the wall. He walked over to me smiling. He leaned in close, so close, I could smell the costly whiskey on his breath. I told you, bro, he whispered. Dad's always 1 step ahead. You think you can steal my company? Enjoy jail. My mom, Sandra, was sitting in the corner. She wasn't crying anymore. She was looking at the floor, refusing to see the monster they had made. Richard, I said, looking directly at my father. You know this is a lie. You know I didn't trick it. We tried to help you, Noah, Richard said loudly, acting for the officers. We gave you a job. We gave you a purpose. And you turned on us. The officer pushed me forward. Let's go. As they marched me toward the door, my mind was racing. They had planned this. They knew they couldn't beat me technically, so they decided to bury me legally. They set me up. They turned my own safety steps into a weapon. I looked at the samples, still frozen, still flashing red. Richard thought arresting me solved his problem. He thought if I was in a cell, he could force me to give up the keys. He didn't realize that by putting me in handcuffs, he hadn't just set me up. He had just walked straight into a government trap he didn't even know was there. The officer read me my rights, but I kept my eyes on the flashing message behind Richard. System stop. FD Rule 21-11. Richard was glowing with win. He had taken my work, erased me from the company, and now planned to jail me to finish the job. But he forgot the lead backer. Wait, the backer said, pointing at the screen. That error code isn't a bug. It's government compliance. I told the officer to search 21 CFR Part 11. When he checked, the truth came out fast, removing me, the only approved rule manager, shut the place down by law, and showed the company for running against the law. A crime. I told him to look at the records. They weren't hacks. They were my safety checks. And behind them was the real problem. Blake ignoring limits and faking numbers to raise the stock price. That was why they let me go. The backer saw the proof and exploded. $1 billion investment had been built on lies. Moments later, the handcuffs came off my wrists and snapped onto Richard's and Blake's. 3 months later, Orion MedTech was gone, taken, sold off, and broke. Blake pled out and went to prison. My mom left ship and begged for cash. I ignored her. I returned only to buy gear for my new company. Richard was there out on bail, yelling at movers clearing his office. And it finally hit me. His power had never been real. It was just cash and noise. Without money, he was nobody. He tried to command me one last time. I walked away. Outside, sunlight hit my face as I unlocked the computers for my new business. My name, my approval, my future. Sometimes the only way forward is to let the wrong setup fall and make your own.